Welcome to the Art Coaching Club podcast. I'm your host, Haley Price, artist, owner of the online art gallery, The Scouted Studio, and business coach for artists. With experience starting and running my own art business, growing an online art gallery, and coaching artists internationally on how to grow their careers, I've learned the art world inside and out. I've made all of the mistakes so you don't have to. Every episode will be a little bit different, but I promise that each week I will show you how to tackle your biggest business challenges so you can get back in the studio doing what you love. Now let's get into it. Introduce yourself and share a little bit about what you do, your artwork, and kind of why you're here today and what people can learn about you.
Okay, sounds good. Well, I guess I refer to myself as an abstract artist. I use bright colors. It has some geometric qualities combined with some more expressionist qualities, and I guess I love playing with those contrasts between those elements. I've been a professional artist. I've been selling my art for I'm into my 5th year now, so I'm still just a baby in my career. Still have a lot to learn. So, yeah, that's basically where I'm starting.
Can you take us back a little bit and share how did you get into artwork? Kind of what led you to where you are today, and how did you start and decide to go full time with art?
Hmm. Well, I didn't go to art school. In fact, I have 2 degrees that I did before becoming an artist. I have a degree in commerce, like business, human resource management. And then later I went back to school to become an elementary school teacher. So I did that for a bit. But I actually came to my art career in sort of a roundabout way. Like a lot of artists, I've always been a creator since I was young. Like my family was really artistic and creative. I was always surrounded by creativity in a lot of different ways. But in about like around 2019-ish, in the span of about like 18 months or so, I went through a divorce. I went through like a mental health crisis that was due to a burnout situation at my teaching job. I quit my teaching job. I started a new relationship. I moved across the country to Toronto where I didn't know anyone except for my partner. So I was experiencing a lot of these emotional extremes. Like
Yeah.
on the one hand, I was super excited to be in this new relationship and all the highs of that. But then I was also in the midst of this burnout state and a lot of anxiety and depression surrounding that. I was in Toronto. I moved here around 2019. Brought a bunch of art supplies with me, of course, to Toronto and just started turning back to painting as a hobby while trying to figure out what to do next in a new city. I knew I didn't want to be teaching again, but I didn't know what I wanted to be doing. So as I was painting and, just kind of getting through my days, I sort of found it as a way that I could become sort of more at home with myself again. I found it just to be really therapeutic in that way.
Yeah.
So I started painting again every day. I didn't realize, like, looking back on it now, like it was a really dark time, but all those like painting sessions in my little studio condo at the time, it was really helping me to explore like my past and my hangups and my anxieties and just like a comfortable sort of cocoon almost
Mhm.
to help me explore all these things. Like, what am
Yeah.
I doing with my life? Like, where is my restlessness coming from? Where's my anxiety come from? Why don't I feel satisfied with anything? Like I was kind of grappling with all these questions, and I think
Right.
doing the art just on a daily basis like that helped me through a lot of those questions. So from there, I think I was sort of recognizing, you know, I was trying to like fit myself into this mold, I guess, of who I
Yeah.
thought I should be. I recognized that I'd sort of lost touch with my intuition. I felt like up until that point, I had experienced all these failures in my life, however you wanna put them. Like, I just
Yeah.
didn't feel good about, like, all these negative things that were happening in my life, and I felt this art is like, "Oh, wow, this is something that makes me feel really, really good." I actually always wanted to be an artist. Like, that was the how I answered the question of, "What do you wanna be when you grow up?" I always said I
Yeah.
wanted to be an artist, but it was never like, "Oh, this is something you can actually do." So, I guess it started with, like, kind of in a roundabout way,
Yeah,
getting
no, this
back
is
to your
great. Yeah.
question of how I started. I think I just started following people on Instagram. As much as we love to hate Instagram, like, it was really good for helping me to see that this was an option. I
Yeah.
saw other artists making this into a full-time career and being really successful at it. Up until that point, I had never really seen that as something people could actually do. So I think it took that mindset shift and that sort of inner work for me to see that my work has value.
Yeah.
Like I'm creative for a reason. I have a right to express myself in this way. Quit playing small. All these messages that I started hearing, it really took that time to work on myself and shift that to really believe that I have the skills and ability to build a business
Right.
and I can learn the skills that I don't have. And I deserve that. And so that was sort of the beginning of like, okay, I can actually make this happen. And then like once I made that mindset shift, that's when things started to, start to snowball for me.
How did you initially start to grow? So, what was your strategy there? I mean, I'm sure a lot of things have changed over time, but I kind of want to look at how you started and then we can talk about what
Yeah.
you learned and where you are now.
The first things I started doing as I started to read a ton, I started investing in some online courses, learning about how to build an art business specifically. And through that, I started meeting other artists and creatives who were trying to do the same thing, sort of at the same stage as me, or like a little bit ahead of me, and connecting with those artists who are doing the same thing. We were kind of able to start building a community and support each other. I built a website and an email list I started. And I think those are the two probably most important things that sort of made me feel like, okay, this is a professional business that
Yeah.
I'm starting to get off the ground. And as I started doing that, I started attracting attention from people that weren't just my family and friends. Strangers start noticing my
Always the
work.
best feeling.
Yeah, exactly. That first sale from someone you don't know is so
Yes.
amazing. I started applying for art shows just to see what would happen. So started doing the shows and getting accepted and starting to show my work. It all started to happen little by little. I would say I dove in feet first. I started to do like everything at once. But I think the big thing was just starting to apply for different shows for people to start seeing my work and for me to start talking about my work. And then I started to make connections with galleries or people who own businesses and things like that. Yeah.
Would you say it's been more helpful, or I guess which have you leaned into more as you've grown, like the gallery relationships and help having those kind of leveraging those to grow your
Mhm.
business? Or have you spent more of your energy in actually selling and promoting the work yourself?
I would say probably a little bit of both. There have been times where I've released collections on my website and I've really like tried to, plan those really well and sort of I don't know, I guess market them and like learning all about that myself. And I think that's really important to do. And I've been really successful at that sometimes. And then sometimes I do that and it's just a complete flop. So I've had both experiences. But then I've had great relationships with the galleries I work with as well, where they're able to sell my work and reach a larger audience than I'm able to. So I wouldn't say I've necessarily leaned on one or the other. I've done it equally, I guess. And both have been great, but just in different ways.
And how do you, for artists that maybe are considering working with galleries or want to expand working with galleries, how do you think about what you want to share with a gallery versus what you want to sell on your own? And kind of what do those gallery conversations sound like? Like if you're planning a collection or you're planning some work to send to a gallery, what does that look like? And then how do you decide, okay, maybe I'll sell this on my own?
The galleries that I work with, the partnerships have come along sort of not in a traditional way. In
Yeah,
most of the cases, they've reached out to me. I feel really
great.
fortunate in that way. And so how that's looked is like they said, "Oh, I've been following you for a while," or "I found you on Instagram," or "I looked at your website and we think you would be a great fit for a gallery." And then in most cases, I've just given them a handful of images of the work that I have, and then they would choose what they wanted to bring into the gallery.
Right.
Yeah, so those have been my experiences so far. So I can't really speak to how to properly reach out or how that goes
Yeah.
when reaching out to a gallery because it just hasn't been that way in my experience.
No, I mean, I think that's helpful. I just think people always
Yeah.
want to see behind the curtain of how these relationships actually work. And so I think even if
Yeah.
that's been your experience, I think is helpful for
Yeah.
people to hear.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. What does your day to day look like? Or how are you managing spending time painting versus outreach versus the business task, marketing, all that other stuff? Kind of How do you set your days and how do you also just kind of strategically think about like how much you need to be painting versus all the other stuff?
Well, I think it's something that I'm struggling with right now, to be very honest, and something that I want to be working on going forward is having a more consistent studio practice, I guess I would call it, rather than these periods of high pressure productivity because I'm preparing for a show, followed by these periods of exhaustion because I've just done a show and now I'm like, I just need to take a bunch of
Yeah,
time. That doesn't work for me, but it's somehow just how I found myself in the last several months. So, something that I want to work on, and maybe you have some insight into this as well, but I feel like I need more intentional periods of play and experimentation,
mhm,
because I think that's where my best work comes from.
absolutely.
Even if I'm struggling for whatever reason, I think the key always for me is just to get back to the work. Even if I
Yeah.
don't have it all figured out business-wise, you always have the work and you always need the work, and that's the most important thing. So I think those times where I've made it sort of like a consistent habit to show up in the studio every day without a specific goal in mind, I think I make more space for my imagination to be a bit more free and to, make space for the unexpected to happen. And I'm able to learn more about myself and what I'm doing because I have a bit more of an open mind going into it rather than, oh, I need to create these 10 pieces for this show coming up.
I
So
think
that's something that I really wanna start to focus on as I move forward because I don't have, like, a set routine, and I think it doesn't work for everybody, but I think for me, that's something that would probably help me.
And I think something that is so important with that is I think the work should always come first. I think so many
Yeah.
people are like, oh, well, if I do the marketing or I do the gallery outreach or I do all these other things, those are so important. And it's like, yes, those things are important. But I think for true growth, your work will start to speak for itself. If you continue to
Mhm.
show up, you continue to create great work, which comes from play and being in the studio, then you have the galleries reaching out to you. You have
Mhm.
people following you because it's speaking to them and it's more of an authentic fit. And so all those pieces do play a role and they do have to kind of fit in together. But I think, the biggest mistake I see people make is not making enough time for the artwork itself. And so I think, that can be obviously like creating what you have to create, obviously, but also, play. I think it's so important. And I think you have to figure out what works for you. And I definitely haven't figured it out for myself. It's
Mhm.
very sporadic, but I
Yeah.
think I've been really toying with the idea of I've slowly, thanks to the artist way, gotten into like a journaling practice every morning. I'm like, what if I could get into a sketching practice? Like, if I
Yeah.
can, the girl who never thought she could journal, if I can force myself to journal, I can force myself to sketch or
Mhm.
paint or do something that's not a huge mess. And so I think it's about just like finding some kind of habit that's small enough that you can start and then do
Yeah.
more.
Yeah, it's almost like how you mentioned journaling or meditation. I don't meditate, but I imagine it's sort of the same idea where,
Right.
like, you start to learn kinda what your patterns are, like, how your thought patterns go as you're working, or, like, what do you do when you run into a challenge, or what are your common mental blocks, or what are your fears or whatever. You start to learn that, like, it's normal to go through those stages of your career, like those ups and downs, and you learn that, okay, this is something that's going to happen, and now I know that it's going to pass. Like, I
Yeah.
think in my painting practice, I've learned that to some extent. I'm an abstract painter. I always go through sort of a messy middle, like ugly stage of my paintings. It always happens.
Yeah.
So I don't panic about it. I know I just keep going because I know it will pass. But I think for some reason, when I'm transferring that concept to my larger practice as a whole, and I'm going through like an ugly stage, so to speak, of my career, it's not as clear to me that that will pass. So I think you're right about like having a sketchbook and a journal practice or whatever it may be. You're showing up consistently so that even in the hard times, you sort of see that you're going to make it through. So it's just that question of like, how do I manage in those times that are between the really bright moments?
I think that's such an eloquent way to put it. And I think it's so true. Sometimes I write and
Mhm.
it's just like, we're writing nothing and my brain is mush, but like I got something down. And I feel like it would be the same with creating in some way because you do it every day, there's no pressure for anything to be good because there's always
Yes.
tomorrow. And I think but if you never start, there's this feeling of perfection. And I also struggle to devote time to tasks that are not necessarily productive. Like it's so much easier to be like, well, I should work on the painting that's going to the gallery, not like waste this canvas on my like random idea that's
Mhm.
probably going to turn out ugly. And so
Yeah.
sometimes that's the battle I'm fighting too, is like the messiness of something that doesn't have a purpose. And so I think maybe that's something other artists struggle with too.
Yeah, I definitely struggle with that same thing because I feel like up until now, I've always been so focused on a goal. Like I procrastinate and I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, now I have these 2 months to create this collection for this show or whatever it may be. But what was I doing before that? Like I need to figure out how to sort of use that time and use that space to play and experiment throughout the whole year,
Yeah.
not just have it be a normal part of my practice that's integrated into those busy times as well as those slower times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something I don't know, maybe this will be helpful, but it's something I'm thinking about is my year is very cyclical. Like I just know like the summer generally is slower for work and then like the spring tends to be really busy, but it's about to kind of get a little bit slower. And I feel like I'm good, and you probably kind of touched on this too. I'm good at leaning in when I have the time. I'm like, oh, I can just
Mhm.
play because there's not as much going on. Do a little bit of play every day. And then, like, yes, if you have the flexibility, do more of it. But I'm trying to figure out that schedule just because I think when you work for yourself, you're naturally going to have deadlines that make certain periods busier than others, and how to figure out, okay, well, what is the balance between these busy and not busy periods of always maintaining that level of creativity?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's sort of having that ability to see that, like, you kinda have that idea of what your year is gonna be like. I sort of am starting to now because I do some of the same shows, like, I do my summers usually spring and summer are usually really busy with in-person, like, art fairs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I have that sort of worked into my schedule now. Hopefully sort of start to plan around that. But then, of course, I'm thinking about making a change as well from, like, not doing as many in-person art fairs and really
Right.
maybe getting back to focusing on just, like, creating a more consistent art practice for myself and trying some different things. So
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to see how that pans out for you. Shifting gears a little bit, what have been some challenges in your business up to this point? Things you've kind of worked through, are working through, just different difficulties that you've had to face with growing your career.
I think one of the things I've struggled with so far is, like I said, building consistency. That's one of the hardest things. My disorganization and I get distracted really easily. One of the things is comparison. I've always struggled with that. I've
Uh,
always struggled with like, on the one hand, it's like I've been very inspired by looking at other artists and being like, okay, this is like they can build an art career, so can I. But then on the other hand, I can be like, "Oh, why have they built this beautiful art career and I haven't yet?" So that's been something that's, like, I find hard, and it's getting better now. I like how we talked about before, just, like, getting back to the work and getting back to kinda my own practice is something that's going to really help with that. Yeah, so I think kinda what we talked about has been the biggest thing, just, like, figuring out how to create a habit or a system that works for me on a day-to-day basis.
and I think that's something a lot of people struggle with. I think it seems like it would be easy, but it's actually the hardest
Yeah.
part, I feel like. What have been some of your successful moments up to this point?
Something that's been really successful for me has been doing the in-person art fairs. So I started doing that in like 2022, I think. So I
Mhm.
haven't been doing it for a long time, but they're a lot of work to prepare for. They don't always pay off financially. And sometimes like they're outside, so they're like really hot or it's raining or,
Yeah.
whatever. So they're hard in a
The
lot of ways,
elements.
but yeah. They have been some of the most impactful experiences just because I get to hear people responding to my art in real time, connecting with it in some way, it reminding them of something from their own life, or them, like, telling me a story about how my art makes them feel, and that's something that really inspires me and keeps me going. Like, I had a show last week where a collector who had bought a couple of my pieces last summer, she said, "Oh, I haven't gotten around to hanging them until just a couple weeks ago," and now she explained to me, like, "I don't know why it took me so long, I have them hanging now, and they make me feel so good." I have them in my bedroom. I get to see them every day. So just like hearing those stories from people about like the impact that the art has on them has been something that's really special to me, because sometimes we put our art out into the world and we have no idea. And in some ways it doesn't really matter, but like we want to know that it does have an impact in some way. So I think doing these shows sort of reminds me of the bigger impact and the purpose that my work has in the world. It just has helped me to learn to talk about it in different ways. Like some people want to go really deep into these conversations, and some
Yeah.
people just maybe don't have the language or experience in how to express themselves. And I kind of love being able to have those conversations and almost like tease that information out of them and like have them talk about art when they didn't know that they could. Like I think that's something that I find really satisfying.
I feel like live shows or just live events, getting that live
Yeah.
feedback, I think is so powerful, but I think it's also amazing to see the effect your art actually has on people versus sometimes if
Mhm.
you're just, selling online or selling through a gallery or you don't have that in-person kind of interaction with seeing how
Mhm.
much of an impact or what a conversation it's really sparking. I mean, I think that can be huge. And so I
Yeah.
think that feedback I don't know. I just feel like it can be so impactful to your career.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I find it really inspiring. It helps me feel like I'm on the right track. But
Yeah.
what it is like I know what I'm trying to express when I paint. I know the feeling that I like of what I'm trying to get across. And so when that lands with someone, it's sort of I just feel like, okay, yeah, like this is working. And it just helps me feel good about it. So
Yeah, I love that. Well, what is something you're currently working on or thinking about working on that is maybe new or that you're excited about? Kind of where is your practice today?
well, I think like I said earlier, I want to maybe take a break from doing the in-person shows for a bit and just really focus on building a consistent practice, as well as trying some new things in terms of style, I guess. I'm feeling this sort of internal nudge, or I don't know, I just have this feeling that there's more out there for me. I don't know
Love
what it
that.
is yet. I have this like itch to try different types of like not different materials or anything, but just like maybe a different subject matter, or just like learning how to express myself in a little bit of a different way. And I
Mhm.
just like feel that I'm on the edge of that right now. And I really want to invest time this like over this next 6 months just to see what that looks like. So I'm
Yeah.
really excited about that. I'm pretty good at knowing what lights me up and knowing what excites me. And I feel like I have that inside me. And now I'm just like, okay, what am I going to do with that? And how's that now going to come out on the canvas? So I think that's what I don't know what it's going to look like, but I'm just excited for a period of exploration and just seeing what comes of it.
Yeah, no, I think that'll be great. And I think I know that feeling when you're like, I feel like there's something more or there's something I
Hmm.
can do with this. And so I'm excited to see what comes of it. But even, you know, I just think that practice for yourself will be huge. I mean, I think just
Yeah.
giving yourself that time to kind of explore will be great. Something I think, I don't know, this is just an interesting question I've been asked a couple times recently, and I wanted to kind of put it on to you is what advice would you give to an artist starting today? If you were to look back at your previous self, where you were when you were first starting out, is there anything you would do differently? Is there any like advice you would give that worked or didn't work for you to somebody that is really starting their career right now?
Something that I always come back to is like besides the business stuff, for me, the most important thing is finding what feels good to you. And even in terms of the business stuff, like how you build your website or how you market yourself or how you share your work, like that all has an element of style to it as well. But I think
Mhm.
the important thing is like find what it is that makes you feel good, that lights you up and brings you alive. So if it's like a certain way, like if you're trying to find your style, I put that in quotes because it's kind of a weird way to say it, but
Uh-huh.
when you're trying to like figure out what you want to paint, for me it's just a matter of doing what feels good and doing less of what doesn't feel good. It's like a really simple thing, but I think it can be really transformative because you're not like saying, "Oh, I want to paint a certain thing like trees or whatever," and then say, "Okay, I'm gonna paint, start to learn how to paint trees really well." But you're like, "Well, what is it about the trees that makes me feel good? Like, what is this brush? How does this brush stroke make me feel?" Let it evolve and let it grow and just keep finding inspiration where you can. I think it's that authenticity piece that you're only going to find like what's really unique and really like personal if you keep searching out for inspiration and just figuring out what lights you up.
I think that's so true. And I think it's being really intuitive with yourself. And also I think something that's really hard to do right now because of social media and the internet, but really finding what speaks to you authentically and finding inspiration not just from other artists. I feel like
Yeah.
looking at, going outside or looking at photos or looking at, I don't know, whatever, wherever you get inspiration.
Mm.
But I think it it's going to be impossible if you're always in this mindset of, oh, I want to be able to paint like that, or I want to be able to
Yeah.
like create this. And it's not from a place of, and I think people do this a lot, and I don't think it's from a place of copying. It's just from a place of feeling like, oh, I'm not good enough if I can't like paint like these artists. When in
Yeah.
reality, it's like you fully have to figure it out for yourself, what your style
Yeah.
is, in quotes, what your voice
Yeah.
is, like your technique. And that really only comes from kind of shutting out the world for a little bit. And maybe that'll be what your next 6 months look like, even though I feel like you've
Yeah.
already kind of found a voice for yourself. But exploring it more, I think it's you really find it when you don't look at what everyone else is doing, which is hard. I mean, I think artists love
Yeah.
looking at other artists, but
For
you
sure.
can't look to other artists for inspiration.
It's like you have to kind of not necessarily shut out the world, but shut out what other artists are doing. I think it's choosing to engage with the things outside of your studio that light you up. It's stepping into a bit of uncertainty and then, feeling a bunch of feelings and then figuring out what to do with those feelings. One of the things I do is like I walk every day with my dog, but I intentionally practice noticing or paying attention to what's around me. So I don't have earbuds in, I don't have phone conversations. I just really intentionally like try to notice my surroundings because that's where a lot of my inspiration comes from. So for example, one thing that I get really excited about is contrast and juxtaposition. Like I love seeing, like say I'm walking on the sidewalk and I'm walking across a crosswalk and whoever made it like accidentally spilled some of the crosswalk paint and it's made this like weird like blob on the
Yeah.
sidewalk. So you have like these straight rigid lines of the crosswalk and then this like weird blob because someone spilled something. Like I love that. Like that's something that gets me
Yeah.
really excited. But like if I was listening to something, I probably wouldn't have noticed that.
Right.
So I try to just intentionally create times every day to notice those things. It sort of I started to collect like this, I don't know, this repertoire of images in my mind or things that I've seen that are really cool and unique to me. And those are the things that I start to incorporate into my work.
Yeah, I love that concept of noticing. And I think it's almost, again, we don't even always have to like seek out inspiration. It's a lot of the times if you
Mhm.
just tune out and like go
Yes.
live your life and live it in a way where you're actually noticing what's happening around you, inspiration will come. And so I think what you said, it's so obvious to me. Like if I just, take out the headphones for 5 minutes and walk around the block, I'm probably going to come back feeling refreshed. You might
Mhm.
notice a color palette or I'm like very intrigued by like shadows right now and just the way like the
Yes.
leaves come through I mean, I can look out my window and like it just makes really cool patterns and I'm not
Mhm.
doing anything with it, but I think there's something probably in the background that's gonna come from that at some point. So it's just being aware enough to notice those things I think is huge.
Yeah, it's really huge, and, like, there's inspiration all around us, like you said, and all of us take in our surroundings in a different way. So how I experience it is gonna be completely different than how you experience it, and that's the beauty of it, and, like, that's where our authenticity and how we express those things comes through. But you have to be open to experiencing those things before you can learn how to express them, I think.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It's like it starts with, again, it comes back to this idea of the artwork. It starts with noticing, creating the work that's authentic to you, and then all the business stuff kind of falls into place. I
Hmm.
feel like when my work is truly authentic to me and the experience and the inspiration that cause that work is authentic to me, the marketing is easier because it's just natural. It's like, well, I'm just going
Yeah.
to tell people where it came from. And then it's not like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
inventing this whole story of the, whatever. It's kind of like, well,
Yeah.
it's just easy to talk about because I'm not forcing anything. It just happened
Hmm.
and it made sense. And then
Yeah.
people see that and it makes sense to them.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that I struggle with sometimes because I'm like,
Uh,
oh, I wish this was moving faster, but you can't rush it. Like, you can't rush your inspiration. There's obviously things that you can do and be proactive about, but like, you can't just make up a story,
right.
you have to experience it and feel it, and that's what becomes the authentic art that's meaningful and has power.
Well, I love to conclude every conversation with just an overarching piece of advice that you would give to an artist, a creative, somebody that's just trying to figure it out. It can either be something big and broad, or it can be like an app or something that's really helped you. I'm open to anything, whatever works for you.
Well, I love this question because I was reading this book. I actually have it right here, and I'm going to read a piece to you, but
Love that.
I was reading just this little blurb about authenticity, and it's something that really stuck out to me. And so it's kind of fitting that we're also talking about authenticity today and that I can share this with you as well. But it's from this book. It's called The Artist's Journey on Making Art and Being an Artist.
Oh, I love
Like,
that. Lovely.
so
I'll
it's
link
just,
it.
yeah, it's really good. I haven't finished the book, but so
Yeah. Well,
far
I'm
it's really
always
good.
looking for new books, and it's a very nice color. That will look very good
It
on the
is.
bookshelf.
Yeah, it is. If nothing else, it's a beautiful book. Art is ultimately about giving authentic expression to what lives in your heart. People sense authenticity even if they can't quantify it or articulate how they recognize its presence. But they know it and they relate to it because authenticity has a spiritual resonance that we all understand. So I just love that because it sort of speaks to, it's all about sort of understanding what's in your heart and being able to express that.
I love
What
that.
matters is the heart, I think, that's in your work, and that's what makes it powerful and impactful for yourself and for other people too. So,
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's hard because getting that authentic heart in your work does take time. I say this all the time. Like, art is such a business of patience, which goes against so many other business norms, and it's hard. But I think that's how you make the best work and that's how you reach success. So I love
yeah.
that quote that you shared. I'll definitely get that book for myself. But I think this whole conversation has been inspiring and definitely has me thinking about focusing more on different things with my work. And I love it.
Yeah, me too. And I appreciate this opportunity to think about these ideas and being able to talk about them with you. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Well, tell everyone how they can learn more about you, explore your work, go to your website. What are your
Mhm.
different links and things?
Sure. So my website is alysonborycki.com, and my Instagram is just at Alyson Borycki, and have a newsletter as well that you can sign up for. And then if you're in the Toronto area where I live, I'm doing a show this summer called Toronto Outdoor Art Fair. It's the biggest outdoor art fair in Canada. It's really fun, really, really great show, and it's free to attend. So if you're in the area, I would highly recommend visiting that. That's what I'm working on right now. And then, yeah, just basically Instagram is the best place to find me.
I love it. Well, I will share all of that and kind of keep everyone posted on all those things. But this has been great. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
your time. I really enjoyed talking to you today.
Likewise, thanks so much, Haley.